Hello, everybody. Welcome to Political Football. My name is Dave. I'm here with Scott, part of the Matty Ice Media Network, and we are going to talk a little bit of draft later in the show. But Scott, I thought we had a really interesting topic come up this week, and that is Tennessee quarterback Nico Iamleava.
Yeah.
I think that's right. If I'm butchering it, I do apologize. I'm not trying to.
It's close. I've heard some people say Iamleava. I think it's just there's a bunch of vowels, so you just say Iamleava.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. But for purpose, we're calling him Nico from here on out because I really don't want to keep butchering his name over and over again.
Sure.
So Nico has decided to leave the University of Tennessee because effectively he wasn't getting enough money. So he's redshirt sophomore quarterback, standout player last year, leads Tennessee to the college football playoff, 5-star recruit, everything. We've mentioned on this show as somebody who I think is going to be a top pick in next year's draft, and a reason maybe not to reach on a player like Shedeur Sanders in this year's draft. Apparently, he was making $2.4 million from his NIL deal and wanted $4 million. That's about what I could tell here. He decided then to sit out practice because he wasn't getting the money and just didn't show up then. Is that your understanding of what happened?
Yeah. I think there is some context, I suppose. It's hard to know what's true and what's not and what's actually happened and what hasn't, but it sounds like they had talked or been in negotiations, if you want to call them that. I don't know that we want to call them negotiations because it doesn't sound like that's been part of what's really happened. But in the winter or at the end of the season, there was an opportunity for them to talk, and he asked for more money then. Now is that true? I could be, I could be spreading disinformation as I speak, but I've read that and I've also seen that reported. Mm-hmm. So that this wasn't just he didn't show up for the Friday before spring practice or the spring game or whatever it was. And because he didn't show up for a practice, they just cut ties with him. It sounds like they all were aware that there was going to be a financial condition placed upon him playing for Tennessee this year, and the missing of the practice was just the kind of, I don't know if you want to say the straw that broke the camel's back, whatever. That was the point which Tennessee knew that they, or at least is saying that they decided that point that they had to sever ties. Whatever. So, that's what I've read and heard.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's important because I know that he just missed the practice here towards the end of spring ball, right? Not at the beginning of spring ball, but towards the end of spring ball. So I think these conversations have been ongoing throughout the spring, if not for, since the end of last season. One thing that I read that made me think that this demand came a little bit later, aside from the timing, is that Carson Beck, who was the Georgia quarterback, the starting quarterback at Georgia, transferred to the University of Miami.
Yeah.
It is getting $4 million. Now, Carson Beck is to college football what Jared Goff is to the NFL. He is not bad. You'd love to have him on your team in most cases, but he is nobody's idea of the best quarterback in college football.
Yeah.
I can see why, if this is the case, that Nico would see what Beck got and be like, well, somebody better pay me because I'm worth a lot more than that. But it does look like the jump from $2.4 million to match Beck is $4 million, and maybe Miami just vastly overpaid.
Maybe. I mean, they may have more NIL money to throw around than Tennessee does. I'd find that hard to believe, but who knows? I don't know. I do think that Beck struck. So this is where there's going to be an issue. Teams that make the playoff might not be in a position to negotiate future NIL deals with players because they're still in the playoff playing football games.
Mm-hmm.
While other teams that have not made the playoffs and are done with their seasons are negotiating NIL deals with players. So it seems like the timing and the windows in which these things open up are a little bit off. I don't know if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it
He
does.
didn't play in the playoff. They may have played it. I mean, I'm sure they were, I don't know what. I'm sure they were in a bowl game, but like they weren't in the big field of teams that are in the college football playoff. So Beck may have struck while it was a good time to strike.
But
This is
Beck
not a good
just
time
went.
for Nico to leave. It's just
Beck
not.
went in the spring, not
Yeah.
in the initial transfer portal. Right.
No, he was because he played for Georgia last year until he tore the UCL in his elbow that was either in the SEC title game or in the playoff.
Right, but I don't. But I don't. I guess I didn't think Beck left Georgia immediately after the season portal. I thought he left recently, but you're saying that's incorrect. He left. Early in the offseason.
I don't know.
Oh.
I have no idea the timing of when he did go, but
Okay.
I know I'm pretty sure he left, and it was pretty obvious he was leaving Georgia. And his decision was kind of in line with declaring for the draft.
I know happened. He declared for the draft, then backed out and chose Miami. That's what it was.
Yeah.
That's what it was. So Miami came and got him out of the draft.
Yeah, and I mean, and the thing for him is, you tear the ligament in your elbow, you need time.
Yeah.
And he needed to show more anyway. So, he needed to go back to college he needs to play more. But different set of circumstances and different timing around, when Beck signed with Miami, there were a lot of teams looking for quarterbacks. That's not the market right now.
True. Very true. Now, do you think, though, that Nico should be one of the 5 highest paid quarterbacks in college football? Assume that every school had the equal amount of money to spend at the position. Should Nico be one of the 5 highest paid?
I think he should be the highest paid. I think he should get as much money as he could possibly get. I'm not answering your question.
No, you're not. I'm basically asking you to think like out of all the college football quarterbacks that are going to be around this year, should he be amongst the top 5 in terms of compensation?
Probably not, but I also think that I thought he had a good season at Tennessee for what they asked their quarterbacks to do.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are kind of shitting on him for not putting up bigger numbers, but that was his first year as a starter in the SEC, playing for an offense that's very it's not confusing or complicated by any stretch, but there's a lot of weird stuff that happens inside that offense. The choice routes that they run deep down the field. So, I mean, did he leave stuff on the field? Yeah. I mean, but I thought he played fine. In the SEC, I thought he played pretty well for a first-year starter.
Well, let me ask the question differently. I'm going to give you Nico versus some following quarterbacks, and you tell me if you were in charge of a college football program and you had enough money, which quarterback would you pay more to keep on your team? Okay, Nico or Bryce Underwood?
Probably, having seen 1 year of college production already.
Yeah, it's coming into this year. It's for this season.
I would say Nico, but I fully understand why 50% of the people would argue with me or more.
Sure. Sam Levitt.
Nico. But I like Levitt.
Yeah. Drew Aller.
Nico.
Cade Klubnik.
Nico, and it's not close.
DJ Lagway.
Probably Lagway.
Garrett Nussmeier.
Nico.
Lenora Sellers. Yeah. Carson Beck.
Nico.
Arch Manning.
I would pay Arch more than Nico.
Okay, every single person I listed makes at least $500,000 more than Nico was set to make this year at Tennessee.
Yeah.
So, and that's in order bottom to top. Bryce Underwood is going to get $2.9 million at Michigan, incoming as the top rated prospect in the country. Arch Manning's at $6.6 million, but of course he has some unique stuff going being a Manning.
I'm sure
as
he does.
well.
Yeah.
But Garrett Nussmeier, 3.7, Klubnik, 3.3, Aller, 3.1. That's why, to me, this situation is not just as cut and dry as they had an agreement. This is how much you make, and that's how much you're going to make.
Yeah.
Right. Now, it's possible in the situation, because I don't know Nico Iamleava. Like, maybe he's just a jerk, and he's like, give me my $4 million in a Bugatti.
I don't think that's the case with him.
I don't think that's the case. Like,
No.
that, nothing about this has struck me like that. I think he's looking around, and he's like, all these people are out earning me, and they shouldn't be. Somebody needs to pay me. And if I'm looking at Garrett Nussmeier making 3.7 and Legway making 3.7 in my same conference, I'm thinking, well, I should be making more than that. Give me 4.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. But now is not the time to be making such a taking such a strong stance. If he wanted to do that, and this is why I mentioned that earlier about him having already had this conversation with them, he might have wanted to be a little more bold, which I understand would not have played out better for him. If he might have, back in as soon as they had lost, he might have wanted to come forward and tell him, hey, I'm looking around at the landscape and all these other guys are making more money than me. I need to be paid like that too.
But one thing I don't know, because we don't get to see these contracts. When did Drew Aller get to 3.1 million? Because if it happened during this time period, that that sort of undercuts that argument, right? Like, is everybody just had these numbers that they agreed to last year? I don't think so.
It's the wild, wild west. I have no idea when if you're allowed to renegotiate how much you make. Is that, I mean, did he breach his contract by one? I have no idea. It's very confusing.
But they're not employees, so can he even be in breach of contract?
I have no idea. Like this, I don't know. It's not like there's a college players union, so it's not like there's people that are going to hold Tennessee accountable. The one thing I think that everybody needs to pay attention to is, and I do think there's a lot of this coming from him in particular, and maybe his camp, is that if I'm not going to be developed here to play it in the NFL, or if I'm going to be developed poorly to play in the NFL, I need to be compensated, amongst my peers. And at Tennessee, no offense to anything Tennessee's got going on with what they do, but that system does not develop guys to play in the NFL. It just doesn't. Hendon Hooker is there, right?
Yeah.
He puts up a crazy year. I mean, crazy productive, tears his ACL as an older player, and then goes in the 3rd round. And it's like, he's raw. He needs time.
Yeah.
Right. So this concept that, and I'm sure the Iamleava camp is going to do this, is going to try to spell out, like, listen, we didn't feel like we were being developed. The offense is what it is. It's not an NFL style offense. There's not a lot of there's nothing that really translates, from the Tennessee offense to the NFL, and that's why we wanted out. And if we were going to stay, we needed more money. I think that's the way they're going to try to frame their argument.
Yeah, I think
it's reasonable.
I think it's reasonable too. And Paul says Scott's right. It's the wild, wild west, and Nico overplayed his hand. It's hard his relationship. He thought he had more leverage than he does. It happens.
Yeah.
So we only know that he overplayed his hand for getting more money out of Tennessee. What we won't know for a little bit is if Tennessee was really stupid to do this. Because if they end up rolling out Davis Warren at quarterback next year, when Nico was on campus, right? Like, and then Nico goes to, it looks like he's going to UCLA, which we'll get to. If he goes somewhere else and is a top 5 pick next year, now Tennessee's just looking stupid and broke at that point. And it's going to encourage other players in the future to actually do what Nico did. Because now teams will have to be more gun shy. So I actually don't know if we know if he overplayed his hand yet. We can say that he overplayed it if his goal was to get more money and stay at Tennessee.
He clearly overplayed his hand in the short term, whether or not, we don't, but then again, if you think about like a program and you've got him coming in and saying, I'm demanding I want a different pay structure. And these are my demands. Aren't you going to have 5 or 6 other dudes roll into the office tomorrow morning if you cave? I don't know. I'm not sure that we've talked about this before a few years ago. There are no rules to any of these things. So just because there might be 7 or 8 quarterbacks or 10 quarterbacks making more than him, I don't know that that's something that would cause, guys in the wide receiver room to look around and say, this guy's making more money than me, and I'm clearly a better player than him, and I need to make his money kind of. I don't know. So it's complicated and confusing, and I don't think, we obviously don't have the context or the details of any of these things. We just know that he missed a practice, was in the process of seeking more money. They decided they weren't going to pay him and moved on. So, it's going to be a problem. I think this kind of stuff is going to be a regular occurrence because there's no real structure to how this stuff works.
And, there is some program culture stuff here too. I'm actually shocked Tennessee had this problem because Tennessee's been paying players forever. I mean, they're the ones that got busted before NIL came out and just didn't get any sort of trouble because the state AG said if the NCAA tries to harm the University of Tennessee, the state of Tennessee would sue the NCAA. So the NCAA didn't do anything, but they were just caught handing out bags, like paper bags full of cash in McDonald's parking lots.
I don't think that was a problem unique to Tennessee, though. I think that was just
it's not
very regular.
It's not. But the idea of how do we handle paying our players and which ones deserve more? Should have been ingrained there. By the way, the coach at the time at Tennessee, when confronted about this, made the excuse that the players deserve to get paid because of the murder of George Floyd. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Great job. White guy, obviously. So we talked about sort of the impacts here that this has on college football. I want to get to some of the possible ways that this could be addressed going forward, right? Because we mentioned it's the Wild West. There's no contracts, anything like that. So I've got like 1,400 words here.
Well, I think there is a structure around how this goes very clearly because teams do have NIL offices and all those things. Mm-hmm. We don't know how any of this stuff works.
Right. But there's no clarifying structure regulation over.
Yeah, there's no NIL governing body right now. Right. There needs to be.
Right. So the first idea here is standardized contract frameworks and holdback clauses. Established contracts that include performance or commitment-based tiers. A portion of the NIL payout is guaranteed if the athlete meets agreed upon participation benchmarks, attendance at practices, promotional appearances. Right. I think this is at first, I think this sounds really good. Pros of it adds structure and predictability, protects programs from sudden departures, and rewards commitment. This is the sort of thing like the talking heads on ESPN would love something like this, right?
Yeah.
There's just one small problem. They aren't employees.
Yeah. Yes.
So since college athletes are not considered employees yet, applying structured contractual restrictions could face legal scrutiny. The NCAA has argued their amateurs' time performance to NIL might undermine that stance and open the door to employee classification.
Yeah. So I can see them saying you need to be at all these. You need to be at 10 autograph sessions every year, and huh? You know what I mean? Like that's weird. I'm not mandated to have to really do anything except
by the school.
Right.
Yeah. If the MDen has a deal, if Underground Printing has a deal with Bryce Underwood that you're going to do 10 autograph sessions a year and he doesn't show up, well, I guess I don't have to pay him. But that's not the school. It's the school having something like this.
Right. But then if said player backs out of contractual arrangements, does the school have the ability to just cut bait and say you're not welcome here anymore? Because that's what happened. I don't know.
Players may push back. They might resist the rigid structures as unfair or controlling, especially if this isn't being done at every school.
Yeah.
That could be a real issue. Now, I do think that if a school could start doing this, or a conference could start doing this, it would be to their benefit in the long run. But in the short term, you would see a lot of players fleeing for greener pastures in other places.
Yeah.
The next thing I thought of is the baseball model, mediation and arbitration panels. Now, to be fair, I don't know much about those things. I just know baseball does it. And I was like, hey, they have a lot of money. They get paid. Their contracts are guaranteed. So,
yeah, I think all the leagues do it. I know the NHL does it too. So, I mean, there's a framework for that to happen.
I just feel like you hear about baseball all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I've thought about different ways. Like if you set up an independent panel comprised of reps from the NCAA, academic institutions, and industry experts, they would be well positioned to mediate these sorts of disputes. This would avoid public blowups, offer neutrality, that sort of thing. But again, the players aren't going to trust it.
No.
Right? They'll think that these institutions are looking out for the school and not for their best interest. The players will never trust that these mediators in particular are going to look out for the players' best interests.
And then there's the fan side of it too. Like if you do that to a school, you're going to lose the fan base. And do you really want to go back to that school after having fans all up in arms that you want more money to go to school there? That's potentially problematic.
I agree with that, but I also think that is like people.
It's old. That's an old school mentality.
People who get mad at labor for trying to improve their standing are some of the worst people. Even in cases where, although I don't think this happens very often, where labor is kind of out to lunch, which has happened in like 2 examples maybe I could think of in my lifetime. Usually labor is, needs to get more pay. But like what I don't want is the University of Michigan screwing their athletes over so the school can get more money.
Yeah.
That makes me way more upset than a player thinking he's worth more than he is.
Yeah.
Oh, and then of course the conferences just make up their own regulations.
Yeah.
Right.
And they do. I mean, they do have their own regulations already. Like the SEC has a rule that you can't, if a player tries to transfer at this point in the offseason, they can't play in the SEC in their first year. So they are controlling some of this. He can't transfer to an SEC team right now and play based on the SEC's rule that you can't transfer at this late in the game and play. So the SEC's out. He can't transfer into the SEC and play.
I'm not a lawyer. I don't think there are any lawyers watching. I don't see how that rule is enforceable without an antitrust exemption.
I don't even know what that means, what you just said, but okay. I think there's contractual language in all of the SEC NIL deals that is explicitly states that they understand by signing this contract, if you breach this contract or whatever it is, and I know they're not employees, but if something happens and you try to transfer into an SEC program at past a certain date, you can't play that upcoming season.
But you can't sign a contract to break a law. So if the law is like, you know what I mean? So that would take care of that. But okay, so like Cam Ward is going to be a Tennessee Titan, whether he likes it or not.
Yeah.
Why can't Cam Ward just sign with the Packers or whoever? It's because the NFL has an antitrust exemption that allows something like the draft to happen and force that labor to go where the NFL says.
Understood. But the problem is time. And there's not enough time for there to be a lawsuit on either side for Iamleava to be suing the SEC to say, hey, I want to transfer to Vanderbilt or whatever, and I want to play right away. There's just not enough time between now and when decisions need to be made to allow that to happen. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, but Vandy just plays him and he sued. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, I'm going to win, so I'm going to play. Right. And you just go for it. Like, you know, I don't see how that rule, if it gets challenged, it can stand up. I can see how all the schools would agree we're not going to do that, but without an antitrust exemption, that just becomes collusion, but to depress wages from the players, right?
But if they're not employees, nobody can collude against them.
And I think the SEC trying to enforce that rule is going to backfire and contribute to them becoming employees sooner than it otherwise would.
It could.
So, I mean, I know that rule exists, and I know that Nico might not be the one to challenge it, but somebody's going to challenge it.
Yeah, at some point in time, all this, we have to recognize up front that the landscape of all this stuff is changing, it's more, we've seen more transferring later in the process from really good players this year than we saw last year.
Yeah.
And next year, we're going to see more than we see this year. It's just, I think getting out.
Now, do you truly believe that, or are you still trying to get me to change a deadline in our fantasy league?
No, I truly believe. I think that we are seeing. Oh no! Part of this is absolutely me telling you we need to change this rule. Yeah, but I think we just need to recognize that players are going to recognize on whatever time frame they're on that they don't like their situation, or that there's more money to be made elsewhere, and yeah, I know it's late in the game, but I'm leaving. I mean, we saw the Texas Tech receiver do it today.
Yeah.
I mean, he just transferred there. He just got there.
No, like, A&M. He started at Tech, played Tech last year, then A&M for the spring, and is gone again. Yeah. Yes, but for our fantasy league, they have to transfer out of the player pool, which is the hang-up, not transfer. If they stay in our player pool, then it's fine, and they're probably going to.
Yeah, but it changes, Dave. It changes the decision making if a player's playing at Tennessee as opposed to UCLA.
Yeah, but that's just part of the game. Like, keep players that aren't going to transfer. Then
move on. Let's move on. I don't want to be arguing about this. Nobody cares.
Hey, listen. I'm just saying that's it. Like, there's going to be variance. You just got to live with it. Congrats on having UCLA's quarterback. One of the big pros to conferences, or the NCAA having uniform rules, of course, is that it would even the playing field. It would reduce the arms race between programs.
Yeah.
Now, as a Michigan fan, I don't like that because we have the endless money cannon. So I don't want to reduce the arms race. And arms race is good for Michigan, but it's really only good for like 25 schools.
Yeah.
And I don't want to turn Indiana into Eastern Michigan. So.
No, I think the landscape it's great if you have a bigger pool of talent that's kind of spread everywhere. So, teams are, bottom dwelling teams can pop up every once in a while. And, I think it's better for college football when there's more teams in the mix. I just do. I mean,
yeah,
I as a Michigan fan, not close to what you are, I like that Michigan has an advantage if they did the NIL stuff smart, which they haven't to this point, but Underwood makes things a little different. I mean, and they really got uncomfortable there, right? But Michigan does have an advantage, but I wouldn't want it. I wouldn't want it to be like the blue bloods and the big boys are the only teams that do have advantage. I wouldn't want it to be constructed like that, because what's the point?
Yeah, I agree with that. The other issue here is that I don't think you could have conferences do it, because imagine if the SEC put in rules in place about a salary cap per team or whatever, but the Big Ten didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, Ohio State would just be walking around SEC programs for every single backup player and be like, "Come on, you're coming over here now."
Not that they're not already doing that in some way.
That is true. And also, Georgia offered Kenneth Grant like $3 million to transfer to Georgia last year for Michigan. So this is definitely like this happens.
Yeah, it's this concept that the teams are getting punished in this whole process is nonsense. No. Come on. I know we're on the same page as far as these guys deserve every penny that they're getting. They do. Is it bad timing for Iamleava to leave the win? Yeah, but I do think there's some decision making there where you'd say if he is thinking long term about the NFL, he is making a smart move to leave Tennessee. He went there though 2 years ago, so part of it's complicated.
Long-term partnership models. So this would be like revenue sharing agreements, that sort of thing. I think that's really good. Promotes stability, encourages loyalty. It ties compensation to team success, right? Because obviously, if you make a couple playoff games, your team makes more money, therefore you make more money, sort of thing. Market volatility, though, becomes an issue in that case. Apparently, agents hate this idea. I don't know enough about it to know why, but everything I saw was like agents are absolutely opposed to revenue sharing models in like all cases, unless it's on top of contractual salary.
Yeah, I mean, I could see the revenue sharing thing being problematic. Is there equity amongst all players for revenue sharing?
Or it's in your contract to get a certain percentage of the revenue that's being shared.
Right, but does that mean the starting you have like 10 elite players on your team and they're getting all the revenue and nobody else is getting any? I don't know.
I think at the big schools everybody would get some, but maybe Bryce Underwood gets 5% and the punter gets 0.3%.
Maybe, yeah, but it's not equitable. I mean, I understand it's it's a meritocracy anyway. I mean, that's what sports are, but it's not like the punter is not putting in his time to do his job. He's the snapper who might be 100% for the year is not going to make much money, but he's working on his craft.
Sports are definitely a meritocracy. I learned it from Dallas Cowboys head coach Brian Schottenheimer. Enhanced education and representation.
Boy.
So enhanced education representation, basically teaching players how to handle their money while they're still in school, and then having agents have to get cleared by the NCAA or get an NCAA license in order to represent within the NCAA so they can, something like that.
Yeah.
It's big issue though is that it's long term. It won't fit. It wouldn't do anything. It wouldn't do anything right now. So, there is no perfect solution here besides an act of Congress. Now, an act of Congress would not be perfect, right? No structure is perfect. That's why you have things like arbitration and unions and whatever. But if we wanted like a total regulation encompassing everything, it would require an act of Congress, probably including an antitrust exemption, right? That's why when baseball players are using steroids, they have to go tell Congress, right? Because they get the antitrust exemption from Congress. So Congress gets final oversight over the MLB. The NCAA would need to have something similar to that if they really wanted to curtail this, but there's no way to do that without admitting that these players are employees, because they are employees.
On some level, there's a level of control that the institutions have over the players.
Mm-hmm.
I know that this. I shouldn't be talking about this stuff because it's beyond. I'm standing on the top of Mount Stupid, even trying to talk about this shit. But I mean, I understand that Tennessee and the institution and the football program, they probably feel slighted. They probably feel like we were giving him $2.4 million. Isn't that enough? But
I can see Tennessee feeling that way because Tennessee doesn't strike me as the best program.
Well, I think any program would feel like this kid negotiated a deal and was making good money. That's a relativity thing, right? But making really good money, and within 2 years he wanted more, to the point where we just needed to cut ties with him. This is going to be the whole thing. Is some people are going to, just like everything else, when there's an NFL strike, some people fall in line with the owners. Some people understand the player side of things. They do.
Be me.
Right. But it's like, this is how this stuff goes. So there's going to be a group of people who think he should just take whatever Tennessee's offering to him and shut up and dribble, so to speak. And then there's others who might say or might feel like, well, he's entitled to whatever he can get. So
I
good for him.
think after Nico went 10-3 and took the Volunteers to the college football playoff, and they saw Underwood get more money than Nico was making, if Tennessee was either smart or not broke, because they're either dumb or broke, they would have immediately gone to him and been like, we're going to match Underwood's.
Yeah.
And proactively done it. Because the thing is, they're not running a business.
Right? Yeah, no, I get it.
Right.
I think that's part of the issue. This is why I'm kind of thinking, looking into the future, that this is going to get more volatile because of this kind of thing. Like, hey, Bryce Underwood has not taken a snap yet.
Right.
And he's got X number of whatever. Let's say DJ Lagway has a really good year this coming year, and way outperforms whatever money he's getting in NIL, and shows up, and Florida kind of drags the process along, and then they recognize at some point in March or April, like, hey, we're never going to come to an agreement. I'm out. I deserve a lot more money. Stuff is going to. It's going to go that way where until there's guardrails.
I think schools being open and honest and upfront about the process, about what expectations are, about how such as that would go, would be better. Nothing about Tennessee, from their on-field scheme to how they handle themselves off the field, in terms of sports, the university's fine. Ever strikes me as like this is an athletic department that knows what it's doing. Right? They always flame out in basketball. Right, even though they're always like a 1 or 2 seed and they never get there. Right, their football team can't get over the hump. You're saying itself, like, their system is just not great for creating NFL talent. I wouldn't be shocked if
not out of the quarterback position, but I mean, they're generally speaking alarmingly productive at the college level, right? Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Oh, never mind. It's our estranged co-host here, who I had no idea that was his YouTube name. Yeah, Cleve, I actually had no idea where you would fall on this, because on the one hand, I know you want people to get their bread, but on the other hand, I know you want to be dedicated to your program. I think that it is different between a pro team here as well. Like, we're so used to the idea of you commit to your program that, like, I'm a volunteer. I'm at Tennessee. And I think that some of the best programs going forward will recruit kids who have that mindset.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also understand, like, you can be taught, like, hey, you're getting $2.5 million this year, right? We will reevaluate the market next year if you like, but understand that cuts both ways.
Yes.
Right. Maybe we go off of that $4 million to Carson Beck because you ain't cutting it.
Right. Or you had a really down year. So instead of 2.4, we're thinking it's more like 1.5 kind of thing.
Yeah.
It does cut both ways, but that's, I don't know. It's unfortunate, the timing of it all. But again, I do think that he had a better season as a first-year starter, as a redshirt freshman at Tennessee. He had a better season than people are. You know how this is going to go. I mean, he's going to get dragged. He's a shitty quarterback, and he yeah. You know how.
But
the
thing is, he's going to get dragged until people watch UCLA games, which they'll only watch when they play Michigan, Ohio State, or Penn State, or Oregon. Or unless he's really good and has him going again. But
yeah,
I still think he's a top 10 pick in the draft next year.
Right. I don't. I have no idea what UCLA has as far as like skill position guys. I have no idea. I don't have any clue. Where they're at as far as winning games or not winning games or any of that stuff. So it's more of at this point in time, I think it's the only place that was probably available.
Yeah, that had the prestige, the money, and the availability.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't. Well, I'm sure we'll find out. Or I think.
And he's from California.
Yeah, I mean, California is a big deal because it's where he's from. But I don't know what UCLA paid him. My guess is it's not close to what he was going to get at Tennessee.
My guess is that it's more than the 2.5.
Okay.
I think about UCLA is not hurting for money. UCLA got it like that, right? They don't.
Oh no, I know they
don't.
do. It's just I don't know what they dedicate to their football program, and it doesn't seem like they've been relevant for a while. So I
Well,
don't
they
know.
just lost a backup center. They just lost who should have been their starting center this year to come split time at Michigan basketball.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but UCLA, for one, they're in the Big Ten. So they get that Big Ten money coming in,
yeah,
first and foremost. And then everybody's got $22 million to ship around, and Nico is certainly worth it to them.
yeah.
So I think he got, I don't think $1 million probably, but I think he got a raise. And probably got some love. Like Tennessee was like showing him the door. Deshaun Foster's probably like, hey,
Yeah.
we want you here.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, I don't know. Who knows? It's
yeah.
I mean, it's certainly an interesting thing, but in some ways unfortunate. But if it helps the process to get more stable, and he's the the guy that did it, or in some ways pushed it along.
And I do think it's short-term thinking on his part because he really is right now set to be a top draft prospect. So all your money is coming then. And I
Yeah,
certainly understand like why a player who's choosing between 0 and 200K is like, give me that 200K.
yeah,
Right. But if it's between 2.5 million and 4 million, and you're looking at, 50 million next year, I might just keep my 2.5 if I really thought Tennessee was the best place for me. That also leads me to think there's other stuff going on behind the scenes besides the money.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm sure that's how they're going to frame their sort of the process they took to step this up to the point where this all had to happen.
But like the situation looks like Nico is desperate for cash, which he probably isn't given his prospects for the NFL. And it looks like Tennessee is broke, which they probably aren't. So like
Yes,
those two things, it doesn't make sense.
It didn't.
So what happened?
To me, it doesn't strike me as Tennessee's broke. It strikes me as they took a very firm stance that we're not paying you a penny more than we agreed to, and if you don't like it, go.
Yeah, but that's kind of giving broke. That's what somebody who doesn't have the money to pay says. They take a moral stance around not paying for something. People who got it like that just put it in the bag, right? So, like, there's definitely, I think there's something else here. There's some sort of like Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni, something I think.
Sure.
In addition to the money situation, where Nico might be like, it sucks being here. This coach sucks. You have to pay me more for me to stay here.
Yeah.
And the coach is like, that's insulting. We're not giving you another dime, right?
That is, who knows? I mean, it could have, I don't know. Who knows?
Now, transitioning from that into the current upcoming draft here, we got a few minutes left. Big news out of the NFL this week is that Derek Carr is dealing with a shoulder injury that looks like it might keep him out for this entire season for the Saints, which is really bad for them because the Saints are conservatively $8 trillion over the cap already. They have no prospects at quarterback. They have Spencer Rattler, which Lord help them. If they can't have Carr, Scott, do they just need to take the preferred quarterback at 9 and call it a day?
I don't know. We've talked in the last couple of weeks about next year's class and 2 years from now class looking like it's going to be significantly better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's fair. I don't know what they're going to do. I could see them. So first, I think the Carr camp is who's put all this stuff out as far as I think this is coming from Carr, who wants out of New Orleans.
Well, he didn't go nowhere this year. They literally cannot afford to move him.
I think they can. I'm trying to get his contract up. I think they can cut him post June 1, and it's not like awful because they restructured him. And this is the part where they put out information that the owner gave him $40 million recently without having him take a physical. And it's like, well, that's, if you're putting that out there, that's kind of embarrassing to the owner. You're making the owner look bad. So if Derek Carr is doing that, he's doing it because he wants out of New Orleans, right? So I guess there's two ways they could go. They could go down the road that you just said at pick 9. They take Jackson Dart. They play a lot of games indoors. That's good for him. He doesn't have a big arm by any stretch. Or they could just burn it to the ground and be playing for that first pick in either next year or 2 years from now, kind of thing. Let's look at his contract to see what it's going to cost them, because they just did. I mean, they restructured his money.
They restructured it so they could cut him after this season if they spread it out over a couple following seasons. I don't think they can June 1 him this year. I mean, the absolute number, like a normal team, maybe, but I think the Saints are like in actual cap hell. They're still paying Michael Thomas.
If I'm reading this right, it's going to cost them $20 million to cut him post June 1. That's nothing.
But they don't have it. They're still over the cap now.
They can. There's a million ways they could find. They can spread it out over 2 years. It's going to cost them $10 million a year to cut a quarterback that they owe a bunch of money to. I think they would do that all day long. They would, but okay. I don't know. I want to make sure that I have that right, because they just paid him a bunch of cash.
Are you on over the cap?
Yes, this cash payout in 2025 was $40 million. So a lot of the money they owed him, they've already paid him. It wasn't like it was a restructure. They paid him a lot of money, cash. His cap number in 2025 is $20 million, right? That's a really low number. But next year it goes up to, his cap number in 2026 is $69 million. So if you cut him post June 1, it costs you, I think it costs them $20 million total.
They're still on the hook for that 69.
I don't think so. And even if they are, no, it's not. It's saying they're if the dead money this in 2025 is $20.462 million. The dead money in 2026 is $19,207,000, but they save $50 million on the cap by cutting him.
Okay, well, if that's the case, then he's getting cut for sure.
So that's I'm trying to make some of this stuff is very, very confusing.
Yeah, my understanding was that the Saints could not in any way afford to cut him this year, given what his dead cap number would be.
I think they can
next year,
post June 1. I think they can.
Okay,
but I mean, it's very clear.
Designated that at any point now. Can't they just say now he's designated June 1?
Yes. So it looks like they restructured his contract. Let's see. I don't need to read this right now, but I do think that they can move on from him. I do think they can, and I think they will. But the point, I guess, is that if Carr's camp is putting out this information that's kind of embarrassing to the owner, because the shoulder injury has been lingering. It's not like it's new.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really good way to get yourself out of that city. You know what I mean? Like burning bridges on the way out. I'm out. So I do think they'll probably play Rattler. And, I don't know that they're going to take a quarterback at 9. I've been told they're going to take an offensive lineman from, I guess that's kind of like a thing. Take it for whatever it's worth. This person knows, but it's not like, I wouldn't take that to the bank, but
okay.
It sounds like they want to go O-line, which makes sense.
I almost asked you who your source was live on air, and then I was like, wait a second. He would never tell me. It's certainly not live on air.
It's multiples. So it's like, anytime you hear things from completely disconnected people and you hear the same kind of thing, it makes you think like, okay, this may be a thing. But I wonder if it is. I wonder if they are going to play Rattler and just kind of settle in on, we're going to have a bad year and we're going to take a quarterback at the top of the draft in 2026. And that's when we start, retooling everything. Because they are in a terrible position with a lot of their contracts.
And that could work out as well because the coach and GM won't get fired after this year because this is their first year there.
Mm-hmm.
So they can have this year to burn.
Yeah.
Go full Aints for 1 year, and of course with the number one overall pick this year being Arch Manning, having Arch follow Archie in the same city, the city he's from, right? And where granddad's a legend, and where his dad and uncles are from. I can see the Saints thinking that might be the way to go.
Yeah. I think that trying to play for Arch Manning would very clearly be their best move.
Yeah.
But that's a really hard thing to do. You know what I mean? Like, first of all, we don't even know if Arch is in the draft next year. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago.
I bet if the Saints have the number one overall pick, he's in the draft next year.
He could. I mean, that could really force his hand, right? Like, and it should. Like, that would be an incredible place to play.
Yeah.
Have you ever had beignets down there at Cafe Du Monde?
Of course.
Dude, I'd be 1 trillion pounds if I lived anywhere near like a walk from there.
There isn't enough Ozempic on the planet to overcome the amount of beignets I would eat if I lived anywhere near Cafe Du Monde.
Oh, it's so true. We were there a couple years ago for the Lions game, and we had beignets, and they were just ridiculous. And I shit you not, I could have just bought this stuff from home. But I filled up one of our suitcases with boxes of beignet mix that we were going to make at home. And it's like, where are your priorities? You left clothes in the hotel room so you could bring beignet mix home. What's wrong with you?
That's Big Mac approved right there. I don't know if our third co-host, the personal trainer Cleve, approves of packing beignet mix to bring home. But
listen,
he loves croissants. He don't pack those beignets.
He's a block of granite. I am not. We're not all created equal.
Yeah, no, that's very true. One last thing I want to touch on here. The Giants had another private workout with Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah.
To me, again, I don't think that means they're going to take him at 3. That means that they're thinking about trading up for him in the end of the first round. Or Jeff Darlington made this point on ESPN, and rarely do you get points this succinct made on ESPN if it's not Mina Kimes. But he said that the Giants might just want to be absolutely sure they need to not take him.
Yeah, and that it's, to me, this whole thing reeks of owner involvement. Make exactly what you just said. The owner wants everybody on the same page, understanding that we don't want to look like fools in the future for passing on this guy. So let's go confirm all that, right? And I do think that that's a reasonable approach, but I also think that it's a reasonable approach to not take him at 3, but to come back in at a point, and maybe they got to jump in front of Pittsburgh. I doubt it. Who knows? But to come back in and take Shedeur. So if a couple, you're gonna want to shoot me in a second. Maybe I shouldn't say in a second. The idea of the owner letting Shane know that we need to get this thing going. We got to get some buzz going. I got to see something. Tells me some very specific things about their approach in the draft. The idea of making a pick at 3 of a very buzzworthy kind of player and then trading back into round 1 for a quarterback are exciting kind of moves. Mm-hmm. It's just what player are you taking at 3?
Yeah, and remember that worked out really well for the Baltimore Ravens in 2018 when they traded back into the first round to take at pick 32 Lamar Jackson to get their quarterback. And at pick 26 took Hayden Hurst, their exciting player.
Sure.
Man.
Right? I remember that thinking, like, what just happened?
Yeah, like you don't just take Lamar at 26? Ooh, man, that was Ozzie Newsom's last draft, and he almost really blew that one.
Yeah. Yeah. But the question then is, who did the Giants take at 3 to create enough buzz both amongst the fans? They don't care about what analysts think or what the media, they just don't, right? They don't care about any of that stuff. But there's one player.
Tell me you think they're going to take Ashton GT at 3. I won't shoot you, but I might have to slap you through the screen.
So you can slap me through the screen. I don't think that they're going to do that. But if you wanted to create some sort of forward-leaning buzz around your offense, and part of that is trading up for what you deem to be your future franchise quarterback, an offense of Shedeur, Janty, and Malik Neighbors is a lot better than anything they've had for a long time, right? Now, I don't think it's the smartest thing to do, but I think that's almost luck boxing your way into what the owner asked you to do, which was to create some sort of forward momentum. Now, are you passing on Abdul Carter to make that happen? Maybe.
I still think if they want to do something like that, you trade down from 3 so people can take somebody come up who wants Carter, come and get him. You probably still get your pick of wide receiver later. You use some of that ammo you got from trading down to come up for Shedeur, and then you draft one of the myriad good running backs later, and you go with Tet, Dylan Sampson.
So let's use Carolina as an example. Would Carolina come up to 3 for Abdul Carter? Probably.
Yeah.
Right. And at pick 8, you'd get Tet. And then you move back in round 1 and you draft Shedeur. And now you've got Shedeur and you've got Neighbors and Tet. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, this offense looks pretty good.
Yeah. And then you tack on Damian Martinez or, or 2 of them, right? Because there's going to be there are going to be 7 running backs in this class better than Tyrone Tracy. And Tyrone Tracy worked out fine.
Yeah, he was good. You
compare Tyrone Tracy with a number of these players, it's going to work out good. So I think that I don't disagree with your idea that leaving with an exciting offensive outlook is what they're looking to do.
It's just remarkably inefficient,
especially take GT at 3.
Yeah. It's an ugly way about going around the process. But then there's this part of it, and I know we probably got to go, but this part of it of Shane made what he probably thinks, and I know the owner thinks, was a colossal mistake in allowing Barkley to walk, even though it's probably the right decision, right? He's then going to repeat that decision by taking Janty at 3 to make up for a decision that was probably correct. And in doing so, he's going to make the wrong choice, but it just might be dumb enough luck for it to work.
But the thing is, all that is missing the larger point that taking Barkley for the Giants in 2018 was also a mistake.
Yeah.
Taking Saquon at 2nd overall was a mistake.
Yeah. I thut he was awesome. So,
of course, a phenomenal prospect. I mean, amazing prospect. 0 holes, just amazing. That's not the issue.
Yeah.
Right. The issue is that running backs don't help teams win. So they took Saquon Barkley. He worked out. He's fantastic. He just won a Super Bowl, not for them. Yeah. Right. And it's and what do the Giants get for this? Just a bunch of headaches.
Right. So then it just strikes me as a Shane kind of thing. I'm not throwing shade at him. I'm just saying that this strikes me as a Shane kind of thing to do, was to not recognize how accurate or how correct he was in letting Barkley go, and then repeating that decision and taking a running back too early to overcompensate for some of these things that have happened. Yeah. I will say that having Janty would take a ton of pressure off of your quarterback. It just does, right?
So Neighbors.
Yeah. So it's like you have multiple things there that you could be. It could look good. It's almost like a really unconventional, strange way to do it. Yeah, and that also hinges on the idea that they can make that trade up to get their quarterback. Because if you walk out of the draft at pick 3 with just Janty and no trade up, not great.
No, which is why the trade down, it makes a lot more sense, because then you get the ammo to where, do you really think the Lions are ever saying no if you could throw an extra 3rd round pick over what the chart says?
No.
Right? Of course not. You just go up and get them. Any team ready to win a Super Bowl now is going to be we'll take an extra 3rd pick right now.
Yes. Yeah. Or throw a 2026 2nd instead of a 3rd, whatever. Yeah. And, I would imagine Shane and those guys don't really give a shit about picks in 2026.
No, they don't. Right? That's house money for them.
It is. Yeah. 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 Okay. It's something I've been thinking about. That is the kind of move that the Giants would do that doesn't make sense, that might work. And I think there is some stuff going around early in the draft that a lot of people might be surprised by, with Jalen Walker and possibly Michael Williams. And just,
Wait, are you saying you think Michael Williams could go in the top 10?
Oh, yeah.
See, I can't bet college draft stuff in Virginia when I'm back home. You got to tell me that earlier in the day when I'm at work in Maryland.
Well, I'll tell you tomorrow when you go to work in Maryland.
Yeah, but now the line might move, so don't say anything now because
Okay.
with our massive audience, we don't want to move markets here. So
that with Michael, it's going to be interesting because I think he could go as early as I think a team would maybe jump with Jacksonville to draft him. I don't love his game, and I don't think he's a great athlete, right? But he's a 20-year-old kid who's big enough with enough length, who's very good against the run right now. We have to recognize that the Georgia defense doesn't do these edge players any favors. They run what's called a tight alignment, which forces you have a nose, and then you have 4 eyes. So 4 eye is basically if you were head up over the tackle, that would be like a 5 technique. So take a half a step towards the ball, right? So let's say your left eye is looking at the left eye of the tackle. That's the 4 eye position. So that's where they force their defensive ends to play. And then they ask them to take their first step into the B gap towards the ball, right?
Yeah, because they have 47 5-star linebackers behind them.
Exactly. So everything they're trying to do is just spill stuff to the outside and then get it chased down.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it real easy to get production playing that way. This is Texas A&M runs the same defense. So it doesn't make it real easy for Shamar and Nick Scorton to get heavy production because they're playing heavy and then they're asked to be run defenders first and foremost, even on passing downs, like step into the B gap and then, do your stuff. But Mike Hell's 20 years old and he's shown flashes. He's very good against the run. Again, both those guys are high character players. And in certain scenarios, some of these teams do need, you need to build your the culture inside your room. Jalen Walker is going to do that for sure. I'm not saying this is a guarantee, but I would bet money that right now there's a 50-50 conversation happening in New England, whether it's tackle, and if it's not offensive tackle, it will be Jalen Walker at 4.
So that's very interesting. Luckily, I got those bets in last week. So those are looking really pretty. I love how at Georgia, everybody's either like the most model stand-up citizen ever or Racer X. There's like no in between.
Yeah, and somebody's got to be the guy that gets all the Racer X dudes like, figure it out, man. Yeah.
Okay. So last thing here before we go, on Thursday night, we'll be broadcasting live for the first round of the draft. I'll be here. Cleve will be here. Scott's invited, but he's already busy that night, as you can imagine. But you'll have the link.
I am unavailable. I am doing some other draft show thing. No offense. Sorry.
That's perfectly a-okay. I don't mind it. I'll see you Friday for our live stream in the second and third rounds. I'm kidding. So
I'm gonna say I think I'm doing Friday with the same place. So.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So. Yeah.
Be sure to tell me that, because then for Friday we'll try to get it out there for people so they know. But yeah, so we'll be broadcasting live Thursday here, the first on the NFL draft. Come watch it here. And the reason I say to watch it here is that Mel Kiper's lost his fastball over the years. He just doesn't call it like he sees it anymore.
Yeah.
I do. I'm not always right, but I will call it like I see it. And sometimes I say Kadarius Toney is a bust and a horrible pick of the Shinicky Christian Darrisaw, and I'm right. And sometimes I'm wrong. But I'm going to say it, and the people we have on are going to say it, and that's the sort of thing you want when you're watching the draft. So come watch the draft with us.
So are we not doing next Wednesday?
We're not doing next Wednesday.
Okay.
Yep, the next show will be the draft show, live show next Thursday. So Scott, we will see you in 2 weeks.
Even if I am somewhere else, I will try to pop in to say hi for a few minutes.
We appreciate that. And of course, the chat's always there too. So I'm going to pop in the chat and give thoughts or whatever. We can do that too. So thank you everybody in the chat. Cleve was in the chat. Paul was in the chat tonight. Thank you everybody watching live. We appreciate it. And I'll see everybody on next Thursday. Scott, see you in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Peace.
Have a good week, everybody.